Mom's been in an accident. Dad, hurry back home. I court. I heard my daughter Emily's raspy voice from afar. That makes sense, as it's just a recording from a voice recorder. Even though I'm on a business trip, I packed a bag for my husband who didn't bother to prepare his own. Along with his clothes and daily necessities, I slipped in the voice recorder. Since I hid it in a pocket inside the bag, making sure it wouldn't be easily found. As Emily's voice played, it sounded distant and of poor quality, as if she's sitting next to a carelessly tossed bag. In contrast, my husband's words were crystal clear.
Why do I have to come back? I don't care if she dies or not.
Feeling a cold sweat break out, I quietly covered my mouth. I felt like if I didn't, I might scream.
Why do I have to come back? I don't care if she dies or not.
His words were chilling, emotionless. Our marriage was already strained, and our relationship with our daughter was hardly smooth. But still, I never thought he would wish for my accidental death. When my husband returned from his trip, he probably thought he'd come back to an empty house. Thinking I was dead and only our daughter was waiting at home. That's why he looked pale when he saw me playing the voice recorder. Watching his trembling reaction, I smiled warmly. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." My name is Susan, a 45-year-old homemaker. My husband, John, is 48 and works at a company. We met 19 years ago through a mutual acquaintance. John and I hit it off immediately and got married a year into our relationship. The following year, I became pregnant at 28. We named our daughter Emily and decided to raise her with love. She was adorable, and my husband was utterly smitten with her. "Whoa, Emily's just a baby. Don't talk about boyfriends." Surprisingly, it'll happen sooner than you think. I won't accept it. We were a happy family of 3. But as living on my husband's salary alone became difficult, I started working from home, balancing housework and childcare. In doing so, I began learning about stocks, earning a modest profit. Initially, I was drawn to phrases like "recommended for beginners and anyone can earn," only to learn the hard way that nothing comes easy. However, with proper study and approach, the stock market wasn't entirely unreasonable. I invested within limits to avoid impacting our household finances, so quick riches were out of the question. That even with my earnings and stock dividends, our savings never grew. It wasn't that my husband's salary was extremely low, but our savings just didn't increase. In fact, some months we were in the red. The reason was Emily, now a sophomore in high school. Around the time I expected, I heard the front door and knew she was back. I immediately went to the entrance and showed her the credit card charges that had come to my phone. "Emily and Brexit, you spent money on online games again, didn't you? And you even bought new clothes. I give you an allowance, so manage within that limit." This at the end of the month, to transfer money to the bank for the credit card bill. I opened the credit card app and was shocked. There were many unfamiliar charges, totaling over $2,000. And all of them were either game charges or from clothing stores I never use. But since the payments were made from my husband's card, at first I suspected him of infidelity. However, he doesn't play games much, and I found clothes in Emily's room from the same stores listed on the statement. Unbelievable. You spent this much again. She got her first smartphone in 4th grade. Initially, it was just for communication, but in middle school, she became obsessed with online games. But when she first asked if she could spend money on online games, I said, as long as it's within your allowance. But she got more and more into the games and started charging without telling me. I told you, if you charge games without permission again, I'm taking your phone away. When I said that, Emily shouted back, "Shut up, you old hag. Don't talk to me about money when you don't even work. This card is Dad's, right? I'm using his money. Don't act all high and mighty, you jobless hag." Emily stood up and shoved my right shoulder hard. I stumbled and fell on my behind, and she looked down at me with cold eyes. The first thing I hear when I come home is you're yelling. It's the worst. I hate coming back to this house. Wish you'd just disappear. She grabbed her bag and kicked my foot. Then she stomped upstairs to her room. Left alone in the entrance, I let out a heavy sigh. Emily wasn't always like this. She used to sulk when scolded, but she understood the abnormality of spending her parents' money without permission. There was a time when she'd check what was within her allowance. Around the time she entered middle school, she began to treat me with this arrogant attitude. This isn't just typical teenage rebellion. The root cause is my husband. The first time I discovered Emily had secretly spent a lot of money on online games was when she was in 7th grade. Piece of money on online games, I asked my husband to talk to her when he got home from work. He let out a small sigh and said, "Huh? It's fine, isn't it? If Emily wanted to buy it, let her have it. Didn't you say you didn't want our daughter to feel deprived? Was that just talk? I do mean it. But spending $1,000 or $2,000 without telling us is different. That's a month's worth of groceries. What, don't you love your daughter? Of course I do. That's why we need to teach her the right way to use money." I tried to continue my argument. My husband clicked his tongue and said, "Stop it. I come home tired from work, and your nagging is just exhausting. He used his phone for the payment, right? Since it's my money, just be quiet. I'm gonna take a bath first, so get dinner ready." Instead of scolding Emily, my husband criticized me for being harsh. Even after that, I tried several times to have discussions with both my husband and Emily about her spending habits. But my husband always said, "It's my money, so it's fine," never showing any sign of scolding her. Naturally, Emily grew closer to him, sweetly calling him daddy and snuggling up to him. In contrast, she began treating me with disrespect, calling me "you" or "old hag," which is inexcusable even considering her teenage rebellion. But my husband knew that if Emily kept spending money recklessly, it would strain our finances. He started to blame me for it. "Do you even realize that you're a homemaker because of me? Get a job and contribute to the household." My husband blamed our financial struggles on me not working. despite me showing him the statement right in front of him, proving I made over $2,000 this month from my work-from-home job and stock trading. He still treated me like a mere money spender. He also relied on my income, but insisted on treating me like a full-time homemaker, pushing all the household chores onto me. Gradually, he began to order me around in a curt tone. Literally, Emily treated me the same way, as if I were just a maid. At first, I fought back, saying, "I'm not a maid," but nothing changed. Exhausted, I started planning to leave this house. Then, one night after several months of this life, I found a receipt for a designer bag purchase, initially thinking Emily had used it. But I couldn't find the bag anywhere in the house, and during his bath, my husband's phone showed a notification that made everything clear. He bought a designer bag for her. He tells me to save every penny, yet he can easily spend thousands on another woman. When I showed him the phone, it displayed messages with lots of heart emojis, messages about receiving the designer bag. That's a designer bag expressing gratitude, suggesting which hotel to visit next, and so on left me nothing but a sigh. Just don't snoop through people's phones. You're a creepy woman. Fillers. It's you who's creepy for cheating, though he didn't admit to cheating. The overt messages made it undeniable. He yelled at me with harsh words, belittling me. Then Emily came down from upstairs due to the commotion.
Hey, keep it down, will you?
Emily's scowling gaze was directed solely at me. She must have heard our conversation while coming down the stairs, yet her cold eyes pierced only me.
Cheating?
It was more like it was bound to happen.
Dad works hard every day, and when he comes home, there's this old hag who's been at home all day nagging at him. Itchen, instead of getting mad about him cheating, why don't you reflect on yourself a bit? Knowing he had Emily on his side, my husband started calling me a greedy, nagging old hag.
I ran out of the room and locked myself in my bedroom. Bringing my face in the bed, the tears I had been holding back spilled out. I had planned to leave a little later, but I had reached my limit. I rubbed my red eyes and reached into my drawer. The next day, my husband said he was going on a business trip and left the house. He probably thought I would resist as he spoke to me with harsh words. I quietly prepared his things for the trip without any argument, and he looked at me, seemingly taken aback. "That's right, just be silent and obey, and I'll keep you in the house." I didn't say a word to him as he left cheerfully, nor to Emily as she went to school. In the evening, I heard the front door open. Thinking it was Emily, I ignored it, but I heard voices. Surprised that we might have guests, I peeked out to the entrance and saw Emily with a woman I didn't know. "What are you doing, you old hag?" "Oh, Mom, come in, don't mind her. Dad's on a business trip, by the way." "I know." "Oh, right. Of course you do." Emily and the unfamiliar woman were chatting familiarly. Emily called me an old hag and the woman Mom, making it clear what kind of person she was. "Are you the housemaid? You can't even greet guests, just like the useless wife I heard about." I stood silently, and both the woman and Emily started laughing mockingly at me. "Gross, old hag. It's annoying when you talk, creepy when you're silent." Why are you so mad that I love Mom so much? Emily interpreted my silence as she pleased and kept insulting me. The woman gently hugged her shoulder and laughed. Look, Emily isn't to blame. Oh, I'm Jessica, a colleague of John's from his work. Unlike you, I can do basic greetings. Jessica, my husband's affair partner, made a point to introduce herself to me. However, her words had no impact on me at that moment. But all that remained in my mind was the presence of my daughter and this unknown woman in my house. Say something, will you? Can she really not speak? I continued to stare in silence. Their discomfort grew, and they began to insult me freely. Hey Mom, let's just leave this old hag and go have some fun. Sure, Emily. Let's go out for dinner tonight. Seemingly hesitant to push past me as I stood silently in front of the living room door, they left the house together, chatting and laughing about where to go and what to eat. As Jessica closed the door, she gave me a triumphant look. Emily, perhaps finding me creepy, frowned and slammed the door behind her. Finally, I let out a sigh. Upsetting Emily's return had delayed my departure, but it was better than them entering the house while I was still there. I had hidden a bag in the living room, packing everything I needed to leave this house. As I checked its contents and began packing them into my suitcase, my phone, which had been silent for a long time, began to ring. Bet you it was the ringtone I set for Emily, a sound I hadn't heard in years. Touching it, unsure if it would stop, the call finally ended after a minute or two. But almost immediately, it began to ring again. I pressed the answer button and a high-pitched voice came through. Hey, you old hag. Call Dad and tell him Mom's in trouble. He cut off my call. I silently hung up the phone. The phone rang again, but I turned it off to silence the noise. Zimmerom felt quiet. After about 5 minutes, I turned the phone back on and found dozens of missed calls. She must have been calling and hanging up repeatedly in that short time. Seemingly giving up, my phone remained silent. I needed to make one final move. I sent texts to both my parents and John's relatives. The next evening,
I'm home.
Todd, you idiot. Why did you ignore my calls?
Before he could ask what was wrong, another voice echoed. Dad, it's urgent.
Mom's been in a serious accident. Come to the hospital now. It was Emily's voice. The Emily standing in front of John was too distraught to speak.
Distraught, he couldn't speak coherently. Oh, no way. Why should I care if she dies? John turned pale and trembled as he heard his own voice laughing and joking from the voice recorder I held out. He finally realized the conversation had been recorded.
what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. I spoke to John for the first time in a while, and he gasped sharply. But his scream wasn't because of me. For behind me, my angry parents and in-laws had come into view. Of course, I hadn't been involved in any traffic accident. The mom Emily referred to involved in the accident was Jessica, John's affair partner. Last night, Emily came to the hospital, her face tear-streaked, begging me to contact John. Mom's in big trouble. "Hey, why did you ignore my calls? Call Dad for me?" Emily was crying in front of me, but I felt nothing. I just silently listened to her complaints. After leaving the house, they apparently headed to the bustling downtown area. Looking carelessly while looking at their phones, they entered a red light. A car managed to stop in time, but a motorcycle swerving around it hit Jessica. Jessica was thrown and lost consciousness. Because there were many witnesses, an ambulance was called quickly. Fortunately, they were quickly taken to the hospital, and Emily was able to accompany them. However, at that time, Emily and Jessica were not related by blood. Jessica was in critical condition, and it was late at night by the time she stabilized. During this period, the hospital questioned Emily and, realizing there was no blood relation with Jessica, contacted me as her legal guardian. I went to pick her up and brought her back home. Since then, Emily had apparently been crying in her room the whole time. So Jessica is... After hearing what happened, the first thing John worried about was his affair partner. This big fool. My father-in-law lunged at John as if to tackle him in the living room. John just trembled, making a pathetic sound. Appearing too shameless. Unbelievable. Committing adultery and then saying it's okay if your wife dies. And was overwhelmed by my father-in-law's fury, stuttering but in defense. As I watched this small man, I showed them some photos. Here are the proof photos of you and Jessica having an affair. I also have screenshots of messages and videos. I'll use these to demand compensation from both of you and Jessica. I'll be filing for divorce as well.
Oh, what?
You're a demon.
It's you who's the demon, hurting our daughter with your selfishness. The three of them initially tried living together, but conflicts arose quickly. John had to work tirelessly as he was the sole breadwinner. Perhaps Emily needed to focus on her upcoming university entrance exams, while Jessica, with her physical limitations, had to rely on them. At Bartside G, as the days passed, stress mounted, leading to heated arguments between John and Emily. "How do you plan to live if I don't earn money?" John said, "Hire a caregiver or something, and you take care of her at night." "She's your wife, so you should take care of her," Emily responded. Money dwindled rapidly, and their relationship deteriorated. Eventually, John and Emily fled, leaving Jessica behind. With no one to provide care, Jessica became eligible for prioritized public services, but her life took a sharp turn from being pampered. Meanwhile, the woman with whom John had an affair, now in a wheelchair, began relentlessly pursuing them. "I can't believe I've become like this because of you two." This, she demanded. "I'm even facing alimony demands. Getting involved with you was a mistake." I watched as Jessica, the mistress, not only screamed this outside my house, but also appeared unexpectedly in front of John and Emily, wherever they were. She even barged into the company where John and I used to work together, in a wheelchair, and ambushed Emily in front of her school. Gradually, John and Emily became the talk of the neighborhood, and John finally had to quit his job. Emily was living a lonely high school life. After John quit and lost his only source of income, he and Emily were struggling financially. Why did you quit your job? Go work. John and Emily continued to blame each other. What? If you're going to say that, how about you get a job too? John said. Moreover, John was having trouble finding a new job, so even Emily's college expenses were uncertain. Fed with their daily struggles, they moved to a place where Jessica couldn't find them and started living in poverty. However, unable to endure the poor lifestyle, John and Emily came to me after just a few weeks. They came to me in tears, explaining their situation, but nothing they said resonated with me. But as I remained silent, Emily got more heated. She glared at me, stomping her feet in frustration. I am like this because of you. If you hadn't complained about my online gaming and shopping, this wouldn't have happened. Isn't it a parent's responsibility to raise their child? If you had raised me properly, this wouldn't have happened. Excuse me. Instead of apologizing, Emily expressed her anger towards me. Had she not even considered her own actions up to this point? Then she said something shocking. I wish you had been in that accident. Pay up for ruining my new family. I was so shocked. It felt like my brain was shaking. I'd been doing remote work and studying stocks, scrimping and saving for living expenses, always putting off buying things I wanted and doing things I liked, cooking and cleaning no matter how tired I was. Up all the time I had spent on these people seemed like a complete waste, and I felt a surge of regret. I closed the front door. Un tried to force his way in, fingers on the door. Give me some money and I'll leave, he said. You're still doing that click-click thing, right? We hand over the money you've earned from it. That's right. You hoarding alimony and making money from stocks must be loaded. Plus, living with your parents, what a luxury. When I heard their words, I felt something snap inside me. Leave, I said firmly. Get out, don't show your face. I'll call the police. My voice was shaking, but I said it firmly. They seemed surprised by my response. John tried to soothe me with a softer tone. Hey, Susan, I'm sorry. My bad. So, give me the money, I said as I was calling the police. Damn it! What the heck? It's infuriating, I shouted. It's all because of you. But John and Emily left after their parting shots. Which in the end, they were probably only after money and left once they faced a bit of resistance. But Emily never once apologized. I had no more affection left for either of them. 2 weeks later, following my parents' advice, I started going to mental health therapy. The betrayal by Emily on top of everything with John had left a deeper wound in my heart than I had realized. You hardly talk, Susan, they said. It's not just that you don't, but maybe you can't. You should see a doctor, they advised. I was skeptical when I first heard my father's advice, but going to therapy made me realize how much I had been struggling. Through this process, I began to feel more positive bit by bit. My mom cooked my favorite dishes, and my dad bought me things I liked. The kindness wrapped around my deeply wounded heart. Now I'm working hard every day to rebuild my second life in this warm home where I was raised,